Google's best quantum chip needs a wire run to nearly every qubit it controls. That is a quiet, physical fact the benchmarks never mention. China's Zuchongzhi 3.2 team says they built their machine without those wires. If that holds up, the scaling math just changed for everyone. Before you file this under China claims another quantum record, this is not a speed benchmark. It is an architectural choice, and architectural choices are the kind of thing that look unimportant until the moment they become the only thing that matters. The wire nobody talks about is already doing real work inside every leading superconducting chip. Why does Google keep it if it carries overhead? And what does removing it actually cost? Those are the questions worth sitting with. Every extra wire you must route to every qubit is a cost that multiplies. At dozens of qubits, manageable. At thousands, potentially disqualifying. The question of who carries that overhead is quietly becoming the question of who actually reaches large-scale useful quantum computing first. This is not a story about one chip beating another on a single metric. It is a story about two fundamentally different answers to the same engineering problem. And one of those answers, if it works, removes the ceiling the other is already pressing against. To understand why any of this matters, you need to understand what a control line actually is and what it is doing inside one of these machines. Superconducting quantum processors are built around devices called Josephson junctions, tiny structures where quantum effects dominate and where a qubit's resonant frequency can be tuned by threading a small magnetic flux through a loop. That tuning is how you address one qubit without disturbing its neighbors. It is how you perform gates. It is how you keep the processor from becoming a wall of noise. And the thing that delivers that tuning is a direct current bias line, a physical wire that runs from room temperature electronics through multiple carefully staged thermal barriers all the way down to the chip. These machines operate at roughly 10 to 20 millikelvin, about 150 times colder than the temperature of deep space. That wire has to survive that journey while injecting as little heat and noise as possible. Think of each qubit as a radio receiver tuned to pick up only one specific station. The direct current bias line is the tuning knob, a thin physical conductor running from your hand all the way down into a refrigerator colder than outer space, just so you can nudge that one receiver onto its exact frequency. Now imagine you need one of those knobs for every receiver, and you want to build a radio with 10,000 channels. The obvious question is, why not just pre-tune the qubits at manufacture and skip the wire entirely? The answer is fabrication variation. No two Josephson junctions come out of the fab identical. Their resonant frequencies drift. You need the ability to tune in situ, in real time, inside the machine. That is precisely the problem the all-microwave scheme claims to route around differently. So the wire is doing real work. Which raises the obvious question, what happens when you need thousands of them? Every direct current bias line carries thermal load at millikelvin temperatures. Every line requires careful filtering to prevent noise from writing down into the processor. Every line needs connectors, routing space, and solder points. These are not abstract concerns. The dilution refrigerators used to cool these chips are already room-sized machines, and their internal wiring looms are a documented engineering challenge. Google's Willow chip operates with around 105 qubits, company reported. IBM announced a 1,121 qubit Condor chip in late 2023, company stated, and reported significant yield and connectivity challenges at that scale. The pattern is consistent. As qubit count grows, the wiring problem grows with it. Roughly one additional bias line per additional tunable qubit, along with all the associated filtering and connectors that line requires. It is like plumbing a skyscraper. The first 10 floors you can manage the pipe routes by hand. By floor 50, the pipe shafts eat half your floor plan. By floor 200, the building is mostly plumbing. Researchers widely estimate that fault-tolerant quantum computation, the kind that actually solves useful problems, will require thousands to millions of physical qubits per logical qubit, depending on the error rates achieved. That is the destination. The wiring overhead question is whether you can even build a vehicle that gets you there. You might ask, can't you just automate the wiring? Routing automation helps. It lowers labor cost and reduces certain classes of human error, but it does not change the fundamental count. You still need the thermal isolation, the filtering, and the connector for every qubit. Automation is a manufacturing solution. The physical overhead at millikelvin is a materials and thermal problem, and those do not disappear because a robot does the routing. That is the ceiling. Now, what exactly is the all-microwave bet, and how does it claim to lower the plumbing bill? The Zuchongzhi 3.2 team reports using an all-microwave control scheme. No direct current bias wiring routed per qubit. Instead of a physical tuning knob per receiver, the idea is to encode all qubit operations, including frequency tuning, in the shape of microwave pulses. Vary the frequency, amplitude, and phase of the signal precisely enough, and you can perform both the gates and the addressing that a bias line would otherwise handle. The information that used to travel down a wire now travels in the shape of the wave itself. This is not a theoretical concept invented for this machine. Fixed frequency qubits controlled by microwave pulses alone are an established approach in peer-reviewed superconducting qubit literature. The architectural concept exists and is known to work in principle. What is not yet independently confirmed is how the Zuchongzhi 3.2 team's specific implementation performs at scale, and whether it fully eliminates direct current bias requirements or substantially reduces them. That distinction matters, and the details of the published claim are still being worked through in the research community. If this is possible and potentially beneficial, why hasn't Google adopted it? Precision. Direct current bias lines give tight, stable, predictable frequency control that is very difficult to match with pulse shaping alone. All microwave control introduces susceptibility to microwave crosstalk. Neighboring qubits can pick up each other's tuning pulses, and managing frequency crowding becomes harder as qubit count rises. Google's bet is that the precision is worth the wiring cost. The Zuchongzhi team's bet is the opposite. Neither of those bets is obviously wrong. They are bets about which problem becomes fatal first. That is the real question, and the scaling consequence is asymmetric in a way that deserves attention. If crosstalk can be managed, the all-microwave path's control overhead does not multiply the way direct current bias wiring does. You are not adding a new thermal line and a new connector and a new filtering stage for every qubit you add. The team carrying less wiring overhead can push to higher qubit counts before the plumbing becomes the limiting factor. Two construction crews building skyscrapers. One uses a reliable pipe system that needs a shaft on every floor. The other uses a different system with no per-floor shaft, but it has never been tested above 20 floors. At 20 floors, the first crew looks ahead. At 200, the arithmetic may have inverted. Researchers widely estimate fault-tolerant quantum computation requires thousands to millions of physical qubits. IBM has publicly stated roadmap targets well above 100,000 qubits, a company-stated goal not yet achieved. At those numbers, the difference between an architecture that multiplies its control overhead linearly and one that does not is not a marginal engineering detail. It is the difference between a roadmap that compresses under its own weight and one that does not. If the all-microwave scheme holds its performance, the ceiling rises faster for one team than the other. That is the architectural logic. It is reasoned inference from established facts, not a confirmed result. Maybe Google simply miniaturizes the wiring, automates it further, and the ceiling never closes in. That is a genuine possibility. Google's resources make it a real candidate. But miniaturizing wiring at millikelvin temperatures is a hard materials and thermal problem, not just a manufacturing one. It is a bet too in the opposite direction. Which brings us to the part of this story where the honest answer is, we do not fully know yet. The Zuchongzhi 3.2 all-microwave control claim is team-reported. Independent replication of its performance at scale has not been publicly confirmed. The underlying architectural concept is sound. It is grounded in peer-reviewed physics. The team behind the Zuchongzhi series has prior peer-reviewed quantum results. The claim is specific enough to be testable and specific enough that it would be difficult to quietly walk back. But testable is not the same as tested. There's also a real risk inside the bet itself. Even if the all-microwave scheme eliminates direct current bias wiring overhead, microwave crosstalk and frequency crowding become harder to manage as qubit density grows. The scheme may trade one ceiling for a different one. At what qubit count that second ceiling appears is genuinely unknown. The Zuchongzhi team may have cleared one scaling wall and built another one further out. Or they may have found a path with substantially more runway. The result is not in yet. Should this matter to you before confirmation? Yes, because architectural decisions being made now will be locked into fabrication tooling, chip design, and supply chains for years. The time to evaluate a bet is when it is placed, not after it is paid off or failed. If the all-microwave claim holds, the organizations currently investing in direct current bias scaling will have to reckon with it. If it fails, if crosstalk or frequency crowding degrades performance as qubits scale, then Google's wiring overhead looks less like a liability and more like precision bought at a price worth paying. Either result matters, and waiting for the result to land before caring about the question is how you end up behind it. Here's my honest read. The triumphalist version of this story, China has solved quantum scaling is not supported. The all-microwave claim is unconfirmed at scale, carries real crosstalk risk, and may trade one ceiling for another. But the dismissive version, this is just another unverified benchmark claim, move along, misses that the architectural question is real, that the stakes of getting it right are structural rather than incremental, and that the Zuchongzhi team has placed a specific, coherent, testable bet that the broader quantum research conversation has not yet taken seriously enough. My read is this: whether the bet holds is genuinely uncertain, that it was placed at all shifts the prior on who hits the scaling wall first, from settled to genuinely open. Google's ceiling multiplies with every qubit it adds, one more wire, one more connector, one more filtered line pressing down on the room above. If the all-microwave path holds, the Zuchongzhi team is building without that multiplier. The question is not who has more qubits today. It is who runs out of ceiling first. Here's what I want your read on. Google's bet is that the precision bought by wiring is worth the overhead. That when you get to thousands of qubits, the accuracy advantage pays for the plumbing. The Zuchongzhi team's bet is that the plumbing becomes disqualifying before the precision advantage pays off. Which bet would you back, and what would have to be true for the other side to win? Tell me in the comments. I want to see which way this audience is leaning. If you want to follow whether the all-microwave claim survives independent replication, and what it means for both roadmaps when it does, subscribe, because that result is coming, and it will matter. One chip still has all its wires. The other says it does not need them. We are about to find out which bet ages better.